Chapter 4. Glotha's Tenement.
Obviously, Varothi Street had once been a street, hence the name. But clearly, it wasn't much of a street anymore. Most of it had crumbled into uneven patches of moss-ridden rubble, the kind of terrain that made traversing it a menace, even if you weren't a cripple. The air reeked of rot and stubborn old smoke, a scent that clung to my lungs like the street itself wanted to choke me out before I could make it to my destination. Every now and then, I'd catch movement in the corners of my vision, something scampering just out of sight. Rats, maybe. Or worse. Places like Hazareth weren't shy about letting its darker things crawl out come nightfall. I kept the brim of my hat low, limping through the narrow alleys like I belonged there. Slums of this kind didn't take kindly to strangers, especially ones who looked like they might be carrying anything worth stealing. Not that I looked like much, just a cripple dragging his sorry carcass through the ash. Still, I could feel the eyes on me, watching from the shadows, weighing whether I was worth the trouble. Maybe they were wondering what I kept in the giant box strapped to my back. "Piss off," I muttered under my breath, too quiet for anyone to hear. The words weren't for them anyway, just a little charm to ward off the worst of my luck. The box shifted slightly, its weight pulling at my shoulders. The sound from inside was faint but constant, skittering, scraping, tiny, noisy things testing their confinement. I adjusted the strap, biting back a groan as the emotion sent another jolt of pain through my spine. I'd carried this damn thing for days, and it was a miracle I hadn't hurled it into the nearest ditch just to lighten the load. As I got closer to Glotha's tenement, the slums grew quieter. The scattered groups of ash elves, some begging, some bartering scraps, thinned out, leaving the streets eerily empty. A bad sign. It was the kind of silence that told you this part of the city belonged to someone. And if you didn't belong to them, you were a problem. The tenement loomed ahead, a half-collapsed wreck of stone, scorched timber, and ledge-held bone. Its upper floors leaned dangerously to one side, as if the whole thing might come crashing down if the wind blew too hard. Fungal tendrils snaked through the cracks in the walls, their faint bioluminescence casting shifting shadows across the ground. A few elves loitered near the entrance, huddled around a makeshift fire. The flames burned low and sickly green, fed by whatever strange fuel they'd scavenged. The elves themselves looked rough, not as shit as yours truly, of course, but still pretty fucking rough. Scarred faces, ash-streaked clothes, and the kind of posture that said they were ready to gut anyone who got too close. I stopped a few paces away, leaning heavily on the wall of a nearby building to catch my breath for a moment. The swill helped, but my legs were still screaming at me, my back threatening to collapse under the weight of the blasted box. The elves by the fire hadn't noticed me yet, or if they had, they didn't care. I straightened up, adjusted my hat, and forced myself forward. Every step felt like my bones were grinding together, but I ignored it. Pain was sacred. Wasn't that what O Holy Azura preached? As I approached the entrance, one of the elves by the fire glanced up. Her hand drifted to a dagger at her belt, a jagged old thing, her eyes narrowing. I flashed her a smile, mustering as much charm and innocence as an elf of my wretched disposition could manage. Who could ever be cruel to such a lovely old piece of shit? She didn't say anything as I limped past, though I felt her gaze follow me all the way to the door. The tenement smelled worse inside. Mold, piss, and something faintly akin to burned hair. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint greenish glow of the fungal blooms filtering through the cracks in the walls. I paused just inside, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light. The box shifted again on my back, the skittering momentarily louder. I winced and readjusted the straps, muttering, "Calm down, you little bastards. I'm miserable enough without your help, thank you very much." And with that, I stepped further into the tenement, ready to meet whatever fresh hell waited inside. The inside of the tenement was as decrepit as the outside, if not worse. Floorboards creaked under my boots, the sound sharp and echoing in the dim hallway. A few rays of ashen light leaked through cracks in the walls, catching on dust motes that floated lazily in the stale air. The burnt hair stench was stronger here, mixing with the sour reek of sweat and unwashed bodies. Somewhere deeper in the building, muffled voices and the occasional clink of metal echoed faintly. Ahead, two Hansira loitered in a hallway I assumed led to the main room. One was tall and wiry, with tattoos snaking up his bare chest and disappearing into a ragged scarf that covered his mouth and nose. Hiding his lower face, opposite of my upper face mask. I wondered if his secret was as ugly as mine. Probably not. The other guy was shorter, stocky, with arms as thick as his skull and a face that looked like it had seen the business end of more than one fist. Both were armed. Tattoos had a dagger hanging loosely at his side, and Fists had a shulith axe leaning against the wall within easy reach. They stopped their conversation as soon as they saw me, their eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Who in the ashes are you?" growled Fists. I raised my hand slowly, palms out, to appear unarmed. Just a traveler looking for a bit of warmth. No need to get excited. "Traveler?" Tattoo sneered, his hand drifting toward his dagger. "Looks more like a drunk to me. You're in the wrong part of town, Zero. This ain't no bloody tap house." "You sure?" I said, raising an eyebrow. I've seen a fair share of them throughout my travels. Most of them tend to have this exact combination of run-down exterior, crouch shit interior, and God's awful stench clinging to the air. What is that, by the way? Did you burn a cat in here or something?
"How about we do the asking and you do the answering?"
Fist spat. His gaze narrowed.
"You look like trouble. We don't need trouble around here."
"And yet, here I am," I said with a shrug, ignoring the protest in my back as the box shifted again. The skittering inside was faint but insistent, just enough to prick at the edges of their attention. Tattoos cocked his head slightly, his eyes narrowing as the noise reached him.
"What's in the box?"
Tattoos asked, his tone sharpening. "More cats for the fire," I said, shifting my weight. "Restless ones." He didn't laugh, neither did Fists. He stepped forward, away from his shulith axe, his bulk blocking most of the narrow hallway.
"You've got 5 seconds to explain what you're really doing here, or we'll see how funny you are with your guts spilling out on the floor."
I let out a long, exaggerated sigh and sagged my shoulders just enough to sell the act. All right, you caught me. I heard there was work here. Honest or not, I don't care. I'm broke. My legs don't work like they used to, and I have a nasty habit of eating once a day. If you've got nothing for me, I'll be on my way. No harm done. However, I let the word hang, letting their curiosity hook them. From what I can see, you lot could benefit from someone with experience in my line of work. Tattoos snorted.
What line of work is that, Zero?
Face renovation. Fists frowned, his thick brow furrowing in confusion. Tattoos, on the other hand, scowled, his hand drifting toward the dagger at his side.
You think you're funny?
No, I said, tilting my head slightly. I think you look funny. That's why you need my help. Badly. But worry not. A little bit of makeup, maybe a new nose, a splash of paint, as they say, and you princesses will be right as rain and ready for the ball.
That's enough! You'll pay for that!
Fists roared, his voice booming down the hallway. He turned to reach for the Shulith axe propped against the wall, but stepping up to threaten me had left him too far from his weapon. Underestimating me? Clearly. That would be his doom, just like it had been for countless suckers before him. I moved faster than anyone dragging a half-dead body around had any right to. The box on my back? I let it drop, its heavy thud echoing sharply against the walls. My legs screamed in pain, but I pushed through, lunging past him and closing my hand around the axe handle a heartbeat before his fingers could reach it. His eyes widened in surprise, but it was too late. With a single motion that sent a thunderbolt of agony through my body, I swung the axe upward and spun, the blade cleaving cleanly through his skull with a sickening crack. Fists fell with a dull thud, his body twitching once before going still. I barely had time to grit my teeth before Tattoos was on me, his jagged dagger flashing in the dim light. I let the axe slip from my hands. It was too unwieldy for the tight space, and stepped into his lunge. My left hand shot out, catching his wrist mid-strike and twisting it sharply. The dagger clattered to the floor as he let out a grunt. Before he could recover, I brought my knee up hard into his stomach. He doubled over with a gasping wheeze, and I didn't hesitate. My own hitherto concealed knife was already in my hand. The blade pressed firmly against his throat as I shoved him back against the wall, pushing his scarf up to make space for my blade. "Stay still," I growled, keeping the knife steady as I leaned in close. His breath came fast and shallow, his confidence bleeding out of him like the sweat on his brow.
You're dead, cripple!"
he spat. "Not yet," I rasped, my tone unsteady with pain from the effort. "But you will be if you don't tell me what I need to know." His larynx bobbed under the edge of the knife as he struggled to keep still.
What do you want?"
"Take me to Glotha." My free hand flicked toward the box lying on the ground a few feet away. "As for your curiosity about what's in the box, let it go. It's mine. It stays shut. Bring me to Glotha without further questions, and you will live to scrounge for supper. Understood?" For a moment, his eyes flickered with rebellion, but whatever fight he had left drained quickly. He nodded, his bulbous eyes lit up with fear. "Good," I muttered, easing the pressure of the blade against his neck just slightly. "Don't do anything stupid now, or you'll end up like your friend." His gaze flickered to Fist's lifeless body sprawled on the floor, and his face paled. Slowly he raised his hands in surrender. I stepped back, lowering the knife but keeping it in hand. He straightened, wincing as he rubbed his throat. He gave me a wary look, then nodded toward the end of the hallway. "This way." I picked up the box, strapping it back onto my shoulders. The skittering inside had intensified briefly when it hit the floor, but now quieted. The noises inside tapping faintly against the wood like a restless heartbeat. I didn't bother calming it this time. Let it rattle. It was fitting, given my mood.